Welcome to the Unspoken Rules, a field guide to human interaction. This video will decode the subconscious sociology of politeness and face in everyday conversation.
Politeness is more than just good manners. It is polish. The word polite comes from the Latin politus, meaning polished or smoothed. It's the social mechanism we use to maintain equilibrium and reduce the friction of human interaction. In everyday life, politeness is not simply about being nice. In Pragmatics, politeness refers to the ways speakers manage relationships, reduce tension, avoid embarrassment, and show respect to others in interaction. When we study politeness in Pragmatics, we are really studying how people use language carefully in social interaction. A polite utterance usually considers the hearer's feelings, status, rights, and social expectations. According to Leach, politeness helps create and maintain harmony in interaction. It supports good social relationships. Compare these two examples, close the door, and could you close the door please? Both have the same function, but the second is more polite because it reduces directness.
Excuse me, would it be too much trouble if I asked to switch our meeting time from Friday to Thursday instead?
Not at all. Thursday works perfectly fine for me. Thank you for letting me know.
The core currency of conversation is face, which is the self-esteem an individual seeks to maintain in public. In communication, people usually try not to embarrass others because embarrassment can damage face. There are two kinds of face. Positive face is the need to be liked and approved of, while negative face is the right to not be dominated or imposed upon. If I criticize you in public, I may damage your positive face because I am threatening your need to be liked and accepted. If I pressure you into doing something you do not want to do, I may damage your negative face because I am threatening your freedom. For example, a positive face threat is when you say to someone, your presentation was weak. In contrast, a negative face threat is when you say you must finish this now. Politeness matters because interaction is not only about transferring information. It is also about maintaining relationships. If people spoke only in the most efficient and direct way all the time, social life would become very harsh. Politeness softens interaction and makes cooperation easier. Brown and Levinson also argue that politeness exists in all cultures because human beings need to acknowledge one another in social relationships. However, if a person is rude and threatens another person's face and hurts his feelings, then this act is called a face-threatening act, or FTA. This danger zone includes criticism and contempt, taboo topics like politics or religion, interruptions, and demands or accusations. In discourse analysis and pragmatics, FTAs are important because they show how language can threaten identity, relationships, and social order. Politeness strategies exist largely to handle these threats. We can mitigate FTAs by following the 3 rules of engagement, or Lakoff's maxims. Rule 1. Don't impose, maintain appropriate distance. Rule 2. Give options, allowing a graceful exit. Rule 3. Make them feel good, maintaining equality and building rapport. Now, read this phone conversation between Lisa and her mom. This is a good example of polite requesting. Lisa softens her request, gives her mother room to refuse, and shows consideration for her mother's time. That is why the request sounds polite, rather than demanding. Lisa does not say, "Come pick me up." Instead, she says, "Do you think you could possibly come pick me up? Or are you in a rush to have dinner and all?" Which of Lakoff's maxims can you identify here? The Mitigation Toolkit outlines 4 politeness strategies, ranging from high directness to high face protection. These include bald on record, positive politeness, negative politeness, and off-record or indirect strategies. Firstly, the bald on record language is efficient and clear, but it can sound harsh. It is common in emergencies, instructions, and urgent situations. For example, help! Go to the left! A teacher exclaims during a fire drill, "Leave the room now!" That is appropriate because speed matters. Bald on record is not automatically rude. It may simply be efficient and appropriate. The second strategy, when we use positive politeness, we make the hearer feel included and valued. It is common in friendly relationships. Positive politeness attends to the hearer's positive face. It shows friendliness, approval, and solidarity. We can say, for example, "You've done a great job. Maybe just revise this one part." Or, "Let's have a look at this together." These utterances reduce tension by emphasizing friendliness. Positive politeness often occurs among friends, family members, or people trying to create closeness. The third strategy is negative politeness. Negative politeness is common in formal situations because it shows respect. The speaker acknowledges that the request may inconvenience the hearer. For example, I was wondering if you might be able to help me. Or sorry to trouble you, but could I ask one quick question? Lastly, it is the off-record strategy, where the speaker leaves room for interpretation. Off-record strategies are highly indirect. This can protect the speaker if the hearer rejects the implied request. The speaker hints instead of saying the intended meaning openly. For example, instead of saying open the window, the speaker says, "It's a bit warm in here." The hearer may infer the request without the speaker stating it directly. Off-record strategies can be polite, but sometimes also ambiguous. We often handle FTAs carefully by using pre-sequences. These are probes to test the waters before dropping an FTA. If the response suggests resistance, the speaker can abort the mission, saving face for everyone involved. We can use mitigation devices to soften the force of an utterance. We can also use pre-sequences, which prepare the hearer before the main act. For example, you can ask a friend, "Are you doing anything after work?" Or, "I thought we might go for a drink." This way, if your invitation is declined, your face is saved. We can also use insertion sequences and off-record strategies. For example, telling your friend, "I'm dying for a drink." Or, "Yes, it's really hot, isn't it?" These strategies help speakers avoid direct confrontation and reduce embarrassment. The speaker can test the situation first before making the full request or invitation. Brown and Levinson suggest we constantly monitor 3 variables to calculate the threat level of our words: distance, power, and rank of imposition. These variables help us subconsciously select the correct politeness strategy. Politeness is a complex, real-time mathematical equation. We weigh the threat based on the rank of imposition, power, and distance against the mitigation strategy required to output the exact right phrase. When we speak, we do not usually choose our words randomly. Instead, we quickly assess several factors before deciding how direct, careful, or indirect we should be. In this sense, politeness works almost like a real-time equation in the mind. First, we consider the rank of imposition. This refers to how much we are asking of the other person. A small request, such as borrowing a pen, usually needs less careful wording than a larger request, such as asking for an extension or a favor that takes time and effort. The greater the imposition, the more likely we are to soften our words. Second, we consider power. If the hearer has more authority than we do, such as a lecturer, employer, or senior colleague, we tend to be more polite and more cautious in how we phrase our message. If we are speaking to someone of equal status or someone very close to us, we may use more direct language. Third, we consider social distance. This means how close or unfamiliar we are with the other person. We usually speak differently to a stranger than to a sibling or close friend. Greater distance often leads to more formal or respectful phrasing. After weighing these factors, we choose a mitigation strategy. This means we decide how much softening is needed. We may use hedges, apologies, indirectness, respectful forms of address, or other politeness devices so that the utterance matches the social situation. The goal is to produce a phrase that is appropriate, effective, and not unnecessarily face-threatening. So politeness is not simply about being nice. It is a careful balancing act in which speakers assess imposition, power, and distance, and then select the level of mitigation needed to arrive at the most suitable expression for that moment. Politeness strategies are not universal. Western culture prioritizes independence and negative politeness. Japanese culture, in contrast, prioritizes involvement, positive politeness, and indirectness, where silence can be a sign of respect. When we fail to adjust our politeness strategies, it results in miscommunication. This can manifest as socio-pragmatic failure, misunderstanding cultural expectations of a speech act, or pragma-linguistic failure, misunderstanding linguistic practices. Examples of socio-pragmatic failure is when a person publicly reprimanding a worker in a culture where this is rude, or interpreting silence in Japan as impolite when it may actually show respect. Pragma-linguistic failure is when not using san properly in Japanese. True fluency requires mastering the invisible rules of face. Politeness is about managing face and maintaining social relationships. Speakers choose different politeness strategies depending on context, power, distance, and culture. A key insight from Pragmatics is that politeness is not universal in form. What counts as polite depends heavily on relationship, situation, and cultural expectations. Now attempt this revision to test your knowledge.